Hello, and welcome to Really Big Hat. My name is Jared, and welcome back once again to Blitzkeep. So, for any of you who are watching this who don't know what Blitzkeep is my original card game that I've been working on. I have been building it up in Tabletop Simulator recently, and I will link to the workshop page for it in the description, so you can go test it out yourself, play around with it. If you are interested in a more comprehensive look at Blitzkeep as a whole, I will also link to another of my videos where I go over the rules in detail and everything you need to know about how to get started playing the game. But this video is going to be a look at the major update that I've been working on for a while now. And as you can already see by some of these examples, I've made some drastic visual changes to the game as a whole. And we're going to go over a lot of that. We're going to go over the design philosophy that I've been incorporating into this new update. We're going to go over all of the changes I've made, both from a large-scale sense and some examples of some of the smaller-scale changes I've made. We're going to go over all of the new elements, why I've implemented them, just give a pretty comprehensive update on what I've been working on recently and why I've been building it the way I've been building it. We're also going to go over a behind-the-scenes look at how I build cards in general, not just for this new update, but just for the game as a whole, how I go about my process. That's going to be a step-by-step thing. I'll show you how I've been updating old cards into the new format, and I will show you how I design new cards from scratch as well. So it's all going to be pretty interesting, hopefully, and hopefully it's also going to be a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, a macro look at what I've been working on. It's pretty obvious, just looking at these before and after examples I have here, that I've made several visual changes. First and foremost, I have put everything in a text box. All of this free-floating text. I have made these boxes, which are in uniform positions from card to card. So everything is always in the same spot for every card, and you know exactly where to look to get any relevant information that you may need. I have also color-coded things in a few different ways, which I'll go over here in a second, and I've also added a few new elements. The biggest one is the subtype bar here, where I've been able to add some additional keywords that certain card effects can now look at to do certain things. So if I wanted to make a card that's specific to warriors or specific to humans, I now have that option in addition to just making a card that would have been specific to, say, riders or, elves or archer. This unassuming little bar here is going to give me a lot of design space to work with. So I can make, like I said, warrior support cards or elf support cards, soldier support cards that are going to care about the keywords in these lines. And just having 2 or 3 more keywords than, the typically 2-word card name opens up a lot of doors that would have been previously closed, just working within a design space. So that's the main reason that I added that. The other new element that I've added, and let's go ahead and zoom into this here, is a flavor text bar. That's mainly just for me. It adds to the, the flavor, of course, of a card. It just gives a little quote that whatever the character displayed in the card might be saying, or, something like this, where I'll just make a silly little joke. And it's mainly fun for me, but, I know a lot of times that's a really fun element of looking at cards is reading the flavor text. So I decided to add some of that. So, I mentioned some of the visual changes already. I also have color-coded things, like I said, in a couple of different ways. First, the background color is going to signify the card type. So, units have this beige background, as you can see from these two. Weapons and utilities are both going to have this purple background, and structures are going to have this gray background, so that you can see at a glance, even from zoomed out, okay, that's purple, so it's going to be a weapon or utility, so it's going to move one space at a time. that's a unit, so, like if it wants to go into the battlefield from here, it's going to have to move like that, but then it could probably move there, and I'm not going to question that because I know it's a unit. And that's just an easy visual signal for card type. I have also incorporated colors on the various text boxes here that are a little more involved, but they're still visual aids to tell you what a card is going to be typically capable of, like what kind of effect it's going to have. So there are 4 colors in total for these text boxes. I have examples of all 4 here, and I'll just kind of go over them one by one. So first, blue. If a card has blue text boxes, that means it is probably going to have an effect that affects your deck or your discard in some way, shape, or form. Blue is going to draw extra cards. It's going to discard cards, either from your deck or from your opponent's deck. It's going to move cards in and out of the deck or the discard, either onto the field or removed from play. Those are all going to be blue effects. And just generally, the umbrella of being a blue card is that it affects the deck itself directly. Moving on to green down here. Green is a lot more simple. It just affects stat points. That means up or down, either for itself or for other cards. So if a card is like, under these circumstances, this card gets 1 attack or 1 defense, or under a different set of circumstances, like another card loses 1 attack or 1 defense, all of that is going to be green. Anything that adjusts the stat points, green effect. Orange cards are even a little bit more straightforward than that, in that they deal direct damage. That can mean destroying the card outright, or just doing a set amount of damage via a card effect. It's very straightforward. If you see orange, it's going to be able to do burn damage, basically. Or piercing damage would also fall under that umbrella, although depending on the wording, that might be green. Like, if the wording is like, your card gets 0 defense, that's going to be more of a green effect. But if an effect just says, this card does 3 flat damage, that's going to be more orange. And then yellow also has a few different effects that it encompasses. It's going to be movement effects. So anything that's like this card can move extra spaces, or this card can move diagonally, is going to be yellow. And yellow also encompasses anything that affects army counters. So if you're going to gain army counters from a card effect, that's usually going to be yellow. Or if you're going to cause your opponent to lose army counters, that's also going to be primarily a yellow effect. The general shorthand for understanding a yellow card's effect is it's kind of like a play extender. It's going to be able to do a little bit more than a similar card. It's going to be able to move a little bit farther. It's going to get an army counter or 2 and, let you take another action potentially. It's going to be able to let you just push your plays just a little bit farther. So that's the general vibe and the general umbrella of yellow. And once again, these are just color-coded callouts so that even at a distance you can be like, okay, that's a beige card with blue text boxes, so that's a unit. It's probably going to be able to move 2 spaces, and then if it has an effect, it's either going to force me to discard, or it's going to let them draw extra cards or play something from their discard. So you know generally what a card is going to be capable of at a glance. And it applies similarly to everything. If you see this purple background with the green text, you're like, okay, that's a weapon. It's going to be able to move 1 space, and it's going to do something to stat points. It's either going to have extra attack or defense that I'm going to have to worry about, or it's going to lower my attack and defense that I'm going to have to worry about. Or it's going to give a different card more attack and defense. But it's all going to be under that same kind of umbrella. And just furthering that, just bring the entire example home. If you see this gray bordered card with the orange text boxes, it's like, okay, that's a structure. It's not moving anywhere, but its effect is probably going to deal some direct damage, either to, one of my units or to my keep directly. So you're, at a glance, able to know what type of situation you're in. So yeah, that's basically the philosophy there behind why I've implemented those changes. So let's go ahead and look at some more specific examples. Let's zoom in here on the Blue Rider before and after. And as you can see, I have made several changes to him. First off, he's got one more attack. Second off, his effect is completely different now. Wholesale different effect. Still has generally the same kind of a vibe that I wanted him to have flavor-wise. We'll get into that in just a moment. But as you can see, this old effect gave him and any weapons or utilities that he was adjacent to an extra attack and an extra defense. So he was the technician, basically, flavor-wise. You wanted him and your weapons and utilities to be close to each other so that they'd get mutual benefits stat-wise. One of the main reasons I changed that is because he is the Blue Rider, and this is patently a green effect in the new visual style. So yeah, I changed his effect to be more blue so that it's just a little bit more of a match to the fact that he's the Blue Rider. It wasn't a necessary change, but it's something that would have bothered me at least, so I had to change it. So now instead of buffing the stats of weapons and utilities, he can play them out of the discard. So he's affecting the deck now instead of stats on the field, so more of a blue effect there. I also gave him an extra attack to get him to the standard of a quote-unquote good attacker, which is 6. And that's mainly because the way that this effect worked, I had in mind that he was usually going to be at 6 attack and 5 defense if things were going well, so I balanced his stats around that effect, and without that attack boost, I decided to just give him the 6 attack that he would usually have had over there. But he's not getting the extra defense, so there's a little bit of balancing there. Moving over here to the Elf Archer, bit of a different story. Haven't changed anything about her except the art. Still got the arrows in the same spot, same stats, same effect. Completely the same, except I just found a better picture. So that's another type of change that I've been making, is just increasing the visual quality, at least in my opinion, of some of the cards' art. I've replaced some wholesale like this, and for others I've just made minor adjustments to cover up some blemishes here and there that I noticed. A lot of them are pretty minor, and you wouldn't even notice if I didn't specifically tell you to look for them, but that's just another example of the type of thing I've been doing. And yeah, that is a pretty comprehensive overview of all of the new elements, what I've been trying to design into them, why I've been doing it that way. So let's go ahead and move on to some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. Let's start with updating a card from the old style to the new style. So we're going to go find a card that looks like this and make something that looks like this. And then I'm going to design a new card altogether. And then I'm just going to give you a general update on my progress towards being able to actually launch this update to round things out. So let's go ahead and go behind the scenes, and we're going to update a card. So let's go do that. Okay, so here is the card that we are going to be updating to the new version. It is the Paladin Captain here. So we are not actually going to be doing most of the work here initially, although we are going to be coming back to this program later. This is Paint 3D, by the way. This is just preference thing. There's absolutely going to be better programs for how to do all of this. Pretty much every step of the way. I'm sure there are better alternatives, but I'm showing you the ones that I'm using. But yeah, so I'm just going to keep this open for reference, and we're going to move over to a different page in which we are going to actually work on updating the card to the new format. So let's go do that. So here's where we're actually going to do the bulk of the work in updating this card. So I have my little card skeleton here, which is pretty much the starting point that I have for all of these. And we're just going to start the process. So first, I want to make sure that I have the right background color, which I do. It is a unit, so we're going to keep the beige, but I do have the others here if I needed to change that. So first we're going to go to the skeleton and make sure that these text boxes are the right color. So I'm just glancing at my second monitor where I've got the Paladin Captain I just showed you, and I'm going to check his effect to see what it is and see what color I should make the text boxes. So he is able to play Paladins from the top of your deck when you destroy an enemy unit. So that is a blue effect. So we're going to pull this out and just make all of this blue. And then we're going to get the arrows. So he has arrows here, here, and here. And that's all we're going to need to do on the card skeleton here. So we're going to go back to the text. We're going to open up the text tool here. And I'm going to activate these grid lines. Now these are kind of a jumbled mess. I use them to keep everything properly aligned on each individual card. So I've got it so where you can see right here, if I bring out this text tool and get the font size to 10, which is the size that I use for the name here, I will just, oops, here, let's zoom out so we can see. Yeah, from there, I can just type out the name, and it goes right where it should. And then I just repeat the process for all of these different boxes, putting the right things where they belong. The deployment cost and the stats are actually a little bit bigger, so come over here for that. And then, yeah, like I said, I just have these little weird guidelines that I can read, so I know where things are supposed to go. And everything just gets properly aligned by using them. That way I don't have to eyeball it. So this bar here that I'm working on now, the new subtype bar, is new information. So I'm making this up from scratch. So I am going to give him the human subtype. He's a human. I'm going to probably just call him a human knight. That is likely going to be enough keywords. I like to get a minimum of 2. I prefer 3 if I can fit them, because the more keywords I put here, the more cards that call out those keywords in the future are going to be playable with this card, like if that makes sense. So if I would, for example, call him a human knight commander instead, that would be another keyword. So I could make a set of cards, or even just 1 or 2, that say, like, if you control a commander, do X, or if the top of your deck is a commander, do Y, or, if this card points to a commander, it has this effect. And, it just increases the design space the more keywords I get here. So I think I am actually going to call him a human knight commander. That way I have 3 additional keywords to work with. So then we're going to come down here and put his effect in the box here. So I am going to read it to make sure that I don't need to change the language on it at all. I'm also going to make sure that it's still balanced against all the other cards that I have. And it honestly looks fine to me. If he attacks and destroys an enemy unit, he gets to play a paladin from the top of your deck. So that already calls out a card type. I may actually change that to knight. Or I might just let him do both. It might be he can immediately play a paladin or a knight from the top of your deck. In fact, I think that's the way I'm probably going to go with it. So already you can see what this additional design space is giving me. So I'm going to go ahead and buff him a little, give him some more things he can potentially do. So if this card attacks and destroys an enemy unit, and I am going to keep that qualification because that is a slight, that is a drawback. That is a downside, is calling out that he has to destroy a unit rather than any card. So if you're up against a deck that mainly runs with like weapons and utilities and structures, then his effect is never going to pop off. Currently, I don't think I have enough weapons, utilities, and structures to make a really good cohesive deck out of just those. That is one thing that I've been kind of percolating on the back of my head, but that's really it really in the time or the place to get into that kind of conversation. But it is something that I wanted to mention that I do consider when I'm designing these card effects. Like if I feel like something might be a little strong, I'll usually try and hamper it one way or another. In this case, I'm calling out a specific card type that it has to attack and destroy. So that's already 2 parameters that it has to meet. It has to attack and destroy a card, and that card has to be a unit. Then it gets this effect, which is, by all rights, a pretty darn good effect, which is why I feel the need to hide it behind those parameters there. So that's just part of the design philosophy and balancing that I kind of do in my head. And a lot of that gets slightly adjusted from, one card to another, and especially one version to another, which is why I'm taking the time now to stop and read the effect and look at it and think about it. And I've come to the conclusion that I like those parameters for the drawback, but I'm also going to slightly buff it on the back end by giving it another keyword. So let's go ahead and keep typing and get to that. So if this card attacks and destroys an enemy unit, boop, 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 you may immediately play a paladin or a knight unit from the top of your deck. So that is the effect in its entirety on the old card. I may add some additional clarifying information here, since I do have the space, probably. So let's also clarify this a little bit and mention that it doesn't cost you your draw. This does not count as your draw action this turn. Yeah, I'd like to include as much qualifying information like that as I can. If I can fit it on the card, I usually try and include such things. And yeah, so that looks good to me. I need to just read this again to make sure I didn't make any typos. Paladin Captain unit has the right stats, has the right deployment cost, Human Knight Commander. If this card attacks and destroys an enemy unit, you may immediately play a Paladin or a Knight unit from the top of your deck. This does not count as your draw action this turn. Yep, looks good to me. Okay, so from here, I just go ahead and save it, download it as a PNG, so we'll skip that part because it's not a necessary part of the process to show. Everybody knows how to save stuff and download stuff, so we're just going to jump right back over to Paint, which is where I actually finish the card. Okay, so here we are, back in Paint. As you can see, this is quite small right now, but we're going to fix that in a moment. So part of the process, and this is another weird thing, that there is definitely a better way I could be doing this, but it's my process, so it's just how it goes. I come over here, and I lock the aspect ratio and have it resize with the canvas, and I increase the size by, I think, 50%. I don't remember the math I use. I'm pretty sure it's 50%. And that actually just makes it a little more easy to then move into Tabletop Simulator. So I had it at the size it was in pixel art because it's the easiest size to work with there that is the right dimensions. Like, it gives me the proper amount of space that I feel it should, to include all of the information. But it does need to be just a little bit bigger for Tabletop Simulator to get it to look just right. And this is something that I honed this down, like, to these exact pixel settings over trial and error over several different cards. And yeah, like I said, there's definitely a better way to do this, but it's the way I do it. So, if it works, why bother? So what we're going to do is we're going to put in the art. So here it is. This is the macro zoomed out version of the art for this card. So we're going to shrink it back down, and we're just going to fit it into the box here, which I do by just kind of zooming in and stretching it to these borders. So we're going to get that there, and there, and there, and there. Now, you may notice that this art actually already has some black borders. So I'm actually just going to stretch it out a little bit like that. That's probably enough there. So let's pull it back one more. Just to try and make it fit a little bit more uniformly with some other cards. I could have just taken the image and like sliced those off manually before I brought it in here. And usually I would do that with some cards, but this was a quicker, easier fix. So I just decided to do it that way this time. So then I just kind of come right back over here, put the width back to the proper value so that it's the appropriate dimensions and it doesn't have that white space on the edges. And then we come over here and put in the flavor text. So let's start with 10, and let's just go down here and see what we can fit there. And this is another part that I just kind of make up off the top of my head. Sometimes I have something in mind for a card, sometimes I don't. Usually if I don't, I'll try and default to something that I think is funny, and I'll just put in a little joke here. And in this case, I did not have an idea in mind for the flavor text here. So, let's see what I come up with. Okay, there we go. Just a stupid little joke. I may keep this, I may not, but for now, we'll just cut it, print it, and send it over to Tabletop Simulator to make sure it looks right. So I will just jump over there. Okay, so we've made it back to Tabletop Simulator. I've cleared my board off, and now we just come over here to Cards, drag and drop a custom. I use full rectangles, and then we're just gonna grab the appropriate file location for this and drop it in. Okay, so there we go. We've got the image loaded up. We'll just go ahead and click import here. And boop, there we go. We've got our handy dandy brand new Paladin Captain. And yep, looks just fine to me. Yep, no alignment issues because I have those nice little guidelines that I use. Art doesn't look weird or anything. And yep, everything looks fine. So the way I'll typically do it is I'll just start storing a set here, card by card, until I get 10, because that's a quote-unquote set, the way I have it right now. Because 10 uniquely named cards will exactly build you a deck. Like, if you always include the maximum deployment cost of a card, you can have 10 differently named cards in a deck. That's an easy way to keep track of things. And that's why for each, set, that's like the dwarves, the zombies, the paladins, etc., I usually just cap out at making 10 cards and then I'll move on to a different one. All of these could potentially be expanded in future updates. But for now, 10 is just a nice round number for each of the different archetypes, if you want to call them that. But in general, that is the process. That is start to finish, how I update one of the old cards to the new style. So let's go ahead and go back to the beginning and see how I make a card from scratch. Okay, so here we are back in pixel art. So all I've done from the Paladin Captain is just gone back to the card text layer and deleted everything. So we still have the blue boxes and the red arrows from where they were with him, and that's easy enough to just, adjust card to card as part of the process. It's the same way I'd do it if I were just updating the next Paladin card. But since we're making a new card from scratch, things are going to go a little bit differently. So there are two general ways that I will design a new card. I'll either have the card, the name, the effects in mind, and I'll design it over here first. More of a bottom-up approach, where I'm focusing on the mechanics. Like, okay, I need a new card that does X, or I need a new card for X set. Let's design that here, and then we'll go look for the art for it. And the other way to do it is more of a top-down, is I'll go make some card art for, a set. Usually I'll have something visually in mind there as well. But the other way to do it is basically to just go get the art first, and then design a card to match what the art looks like. I kind of waffle back and forth which way I usually do it. Like, I don't have a usually. Like, I will do both hand in hand. But since we have this here already, I'm going to try to design here first, and then go get some art afterwards. Just do it one step at a time that way. So, I do know that I want another elf card specifically, because I don't quite have 10 elf cards to make a quote-unquote full set of them. I'm about 3 shy, I think. I'm pretty sure I have 7 of those right now. So I actually need 3 more elf cards to fill that set out. So I'm going to go ahead and design one here. So we're going to call this elf. Oh, let's see. What don't I have in the elves? And this right here is a good example of how sometimes making the art first can be a little more helpful in like naming the card, especially, because if I already know what it looks like, then I can be like, okay, well, that looks like this, and then just call it that. On the other side of the fence here, I have to come up with something that I think I can get good art for later. So it is probably a little bit easier to go the other direction, but I did want to demonstrate this way first. So let's just come up with a name real quick here. Okay, we're going to go with Elf Duelist. That sounds pretty cool. So it is going to be a unit, of course. I keep making typos because I have to reach around my mic. I've got it in a pretty weird spot, so that's why that keeps happening. And they are going to be an elf warrior. Probably. That's the vibe I've got in mind. We'll go ahead and make the effect here first before we decide on the stats, because the effect is usually going to signal to me what the deployment cost should be and what their stat spread should be like. I like to figure out what the card does down here first before I fill those in. And that is a normal process, is I'll start with the effect. Because the deployment cost, like, there are a couple of different ways of looking at it. In some ways, a high deployment cost, like a 3, is a downside. It's a significant downside, because it means you can have less of those cards in a deck, so you're less likely to see it. So in that way, their stats and their effect better be a little bit better than a 2, which you can have more of. Like, that's the general philosophy for that element of card design. So let's go ahead and just come up with an effect here for this, and ignore the blue background for now, because I'll just figure out what color to make it once I figure out what the effect should be. Okay, I think I've got a pretty good one. No, that's some... I want to give it a stat boost when it's fighting cards with an equal or higher deployment cost. So I'm probably going to make it a 2. Okay, so let's reword it back here. Let's go with, if this card attacks that. And maybe we'll give it a further boost against 6 deployment cost cards specifically. That could be kind of interesting. I kind of already have a card that somewhat does the giant killer role already. Doesn't mean you can't have more of that. You know what? Let's actually just go back and make it a 3 or higher. And give it an attack boost of 2. Yeah, so it is a good duelist. You know, it lives up to its name. It's going to be a pretty effective attacker against cards that your opponent has moving around the board. The wording of this effect specifically is going to make it not so great at attacking the keep, because it doesn't have a deployment cost. So that in itself is already a bit of a drawback. Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with that effect. If it attacks something with deployment cost of 3 or higher, it gets to attack during combat. Easy, straightforward. And yeah, that does absolutely feel like a 2 to me, so I'll go ahead and give that there. And then for its stats, let's give it 5 HP. We'll give it the 6 attack. How much defense? I think I want its defense to be on the lower end, so that's a little easy to take care of itself. But we'll give it good speed. We'll give it 3 speed. That's going to help strike first, as it were, which is another thematic element that's kind of evocative of, you know, a duelist. Just a minor thing, but, you know. So we'll take off the grid lines, and yeah, like I said, this is actually going to be a green card, so we're going to go fix that up. We'll go down to the skeleton, give it that, and let's decide on what its arrows should be. I mean, this configuration is actually not bad. You know what? Actually, I am comfortable with the arrows the way they are. That's perfectly fine for a card like this. Yeah, those are actually fine. Those can stay as they are. So yeah, that was that was the process, start to finish, of like designing a new card bottom up from this end. So now I'm gonna go try and find some art for it, and we'll go from there. So I'll go ahead and just save this, download it, and we will move on to the next step. Okay, so here we are. This is how I'm getting my art. It is an AI generator. I know a lot of people have some pretty strong feelings about that, but in this case especially, since this is a game that I'm basically just designing for fun, it's not for profit at all in this stage, and if I ever decided to actually produce it, then, you know, I'd be at a stage where I could hire actual artists. But for my purposes, this is perfectly acceptable, I feel, to actually get the art that I need to make it look cool. Yeah, this one in particular, I had no specific reason to come find this photo generator out of all of them that exist. It's just one of the first ones I clicked on that I played around with and got some stuff that I could actually use out of, so I decided to stick with it. Again, there might be better ones, there might be worse ones, I have no idea. This is just the one I found, so it's my process. So we are trying to make an elf duelist here, so I'm just going to say we need an elf in a forest, because that's just the background that I've been given all of them, flavor-wise. Let's see if we can give them a sword or something. Holding a sword. Yeah, just general sword. I can maybe try and be more specific later on. I'd prefer something like a rapier, maybe. Possibly like a cutlass. Something a little more evocative of a duelist, per se. But for now, we'll just say that. And let's give him like an action pose. Close up. Okay, so that should probably be good enough for a first pass to see if this is going to give me anything usable, and we'll just see what we get. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, so yeah, usually what I'll do is I'll start with something very generic like that. Like I won't describe any like physical characteristics of the character themselves or even the weapon, anything that they're wearing, hair and eye color, stuff like that. I'll see what they want to give me, and then I'll try and kind of double down from there. So I kind of like this one with the green hair as a vibe. I don't know, that one just kind of stands out a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and just double down on that. Let's, green hair. You know what, let's try and give him some armor. Leather armor, holding sword, an action pose, dramatic close-up. So let's see what we get from that additional info. Yep, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Yeah, you're always going to get some stuff like that that's a little little thirsty. As you can see, like, I didn't specify gender at all. I just said give me an elf, and, you know, they're all anime waifus. So I just kind of leaned into that for the the flavor of all of the elves. Just, yeah, they can all be anime girls. Why not? I don't actually care. But yeah, again, I don't really see anything that I'm in love with. This one's pretty cool, but you can barely kind of make out the sword. Plus, it kind of like weirdly blends into the hair there. So I'd probably have to adjust that. Like, that is also like not a straight line that I can tell. It looks like it kind of like curves off there behind the head. And yeah, I'm barely capable of fixing stuff like that after the fact. Like, if there are minor things that are wrong with one of these, I can usually go in on, you know, in paint and just noodle around with it until I've smoothed out the proverbial rough edges. But with stuff like that, I try and look for a little bit of a better base to work with. So, like, this one's pretty good. One thing I'm noticing is that the close-up might be a little too close-up for my preference. Like, I'd prefer, like, a waist-up shot. Yeah, something a little more like that. But, you know, this one is obviously not usable because of the weird artifacts and the face is obscured. But, yeah, I am gonna actually maybe work with this. I don't hate this. Like, that is completely usable, like, just as is. I don't see any weird artifacts happening, you know, nothing weird going on with the hair or the eyes or the sword or the fingers or anything. Can't even see the fingers, so that helps. So yeah, maybe I'll go ahead and save this one. Okay, but let's keep going, see what else we can get. Yeah, see, this one, like, has a pretty cool vibe to it, but, you know, you look at it and it's like, she's holding the sword on the blade. Like, what's going on there? Like, and that's the kind of thing, like, that would be really hard to fix. Like, to change it so that, like, this is the handle and then the blade comes out. Like, that would be a lot of work. And yeah, something like this, where it's kind of got, like, a lot of weird stuff going on. Like, this arm just turns into a sword here, and then this, you know, that's clearly just got some AI weirdness with the hands. And, you know, you gotta get through all of that kind of stuff to get a workable product to use. I kind of like this. It's kind of got like the sparks flying off the blade. That sounds cool. let's see if I can, let's go and make this actionable. Swinging a sword. Yeah, so that'll kind of give the effect of potentially like clashing blades with a likely unseen opponent. This is not very good at giving you more than one person. Yeah, we're kind of getting like a little bit more than I was going for. Still kind of cool looking. A couple of them. So that could work. Say small. See if we can tone that down a bit. No. It's like, I'm going to give you even more. uh, but, I don't actually hate that. Like, just like the full-on, like, lightning coming out of the sword. It's kind of cool. Like, if I got one that didn't have, like, the weird AI stuff, that was a little less busy, and really hammered home, this is an elf with a sword that happens to have some cool magic effects coming out of it, rather than, hey, look at all these magic effects, and if you peer closely, you can see an elf with a sword. Yeah, maybe something like this. That's actually not bad. Again, the shape is a little weird, but that at least should be that should probably be fixable. I don't know that I like the way this is kind of molding into each other up there, so yeah, I mean, that combined with like the hand being at a weird angle is probably just enough for me to give this one a pass, but that is kind of cool. I like that. I could definitely see going for something like this. It's just this one specifically is a little bit lacking. Oh, man. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I hate when we get to one like this, because this would be really cool. I like the composition here. Like, there's just a little bit of, spark effect coming out of the sword. There's a little bit too much there that I would probably try and get rid of. There's an extra finger that I'd have to edit out. Actually, there's two. But, like, this is something that I feel generally confident I could probably fix. But then there's also, like, this weird blade coming in. And so, you combine, like, okay, I'd probably have to get rid of that with I'd probably have to get rid of that, and then maybe adjust, like, where the thumb is as well, and then I'd probably have to get rid of that. It's just a little bit too much work on the back end. But, like, if this didn't have all those issues, like, this is probably the one I'd end up using. Like, I like that art a lot. But that is absolutely the downside of this process. And, I mean, if I had the skill, I would just try and draw stuff like this myself from scratch, but I can't even approach that. Like I said, the best I could potentially do is take something that already exists and then fix it. This one is promising. Again, the only real odd part is like this little artifact here that it's just kind of like, what even is that? But that should be fairly easy to get rid of, like, especially because, like, look, the background around it is all pretty much solid green. I can pretty easily fade that out. Then we've got, again, pretty good composition as far as, like, it's a pretty cool angle. The sword is maybe a little bit oddly shaped, like, especially here at the tip, but that's certainly nothing I would obsess over. Probably wouldn't even bother to change that, really. The sparks, again, aren't too overbearing. Like, it's basically one big effect and then, like, one artifact coming off of it. So this is actually, this looks pretty good. I think I'm going to try and fix this one up here. I'm going to take that out and see if once I get this a little bit more close up, if I notice anything else that's too weird. But yeah, for now this looks good. So let's grab this and go see if we can use it. Okay, so here we are back in Paint, looking at this close up, and yeah, like I said, it looks pretty good. I don't really notice anything major that needs fixed. There's like a weird red thing over there that I'll get rid of, and then I want to get rid of this. So let's start that process, I suppose. So for that, I'm going to try for the watercolor brush here. Let's go for something smaller and try and get the fine details, like around the hair and around the hand here. And again, like the hand itself is also kind of weird looking now that I actually see it. So I might attempt to maybe articulate that a little bit. We'll see. It's pretty small and kind of hard to notice. I try not to worry about stuff like that if it's not like egregiously wrong, but we'll see. So let's go ahead and grab color from around this thing, and we'll just start doodling it out. Actually, here, let's start with a bigger brush for like the large sections here. And I'm not going to worry too much about like matching like the gradient behind it or anything just yet. I'm just going to start with like this one shade of green that I grabbed from nearby. And once this weird, I don't even know what this is, like whip looking thing is just kind of covered by this green, I'm going to go back and try and fix the gradient, match it a little bit more to what the background looks like. So we'll just kind of go in here, get rid of all of that, get it up to the hair, and that should be good there. Yep. Then we'll come down here, basically just do the same thing there. We will go down to the smaller one to get into these little nooks and crannies. Yep, there we go. That should be pretty much good. Okay, yeah. So there's that. And yeah, so like now what we have is this big green splotch there that we are going to fix up again. So we're just going to start taking some of these other background colors and kind of dispersing them through the pattern. Again, I'll try and work from 10. And we'll make this about a 50% opacity. Sounds good for first pass. And then I'm just going to like throw a little bit of that color in around here where I grabbed it. And I'm going to grab some from the other side and kind of do the same thing back the other way. And basically what we're doing is just kind of blurring this a little bit for now. So if we come up here, that's a little bit of a different color there. And then there's like some of a darker shade up there that we can kind of spread out here, especially. And then we'll kind of do the same thing here. That's a little greener there that we'll kind of nudge this with. And then like over here, gets a little bit darker again. And around there. And then we just kind of do the same thing with that. There's like a little bit of a shadow there that we might want to pull in. And so even just that, now it looks a little bit better. Like back here, you can hardly even notice anything anymore. And we're gonna fix that up a little bit more as well. So we'll come grab this. Do one of those. Yeah, a little bit more of that there. Then we want some of this. Hey, come on. Go. Yeah. So we want to grab that kind of across there, and down through here as well. And then we want to grab some of this again, and then move this back out. That weird, almost bluish part of the pattern. We just kind of want to spread that out a little bit. And that's, yeah, generally looking pretty good. You can still kind of tell that that's like a distinct splotch, but, you know, it's starting to look like just any of the other background details already. So we're very close to finished. So now I'm actually going to kind of grab this from over there. We're going to go back down to the smaller one. We're just going to very slightly, like, kind of create an edge of that here. Just as a, yeah. So I actually think I want that a little bit darker, perhaps. Let's see what this is. Yeah, that blends a little bit better. And then, yeah, like I said, I kind of want a little bit of the darker shades to take over here. And I'm going to use a different tool. I'm going to, yeah, 25% spray can seems roughly fine. I'm just going to do a little bit of that there. I'm going to take this brighter one, just add in some like soft touches there that just kind of, yeah, see, that looks pretty much fine now. Can fix it up a little bit more with maybe some of this. Just, yeah, so now that pretty much just looks like the rest of the background. I am going to come back to this brush real quick and just kind of smooth out some of the slightly more pixelated parts of that. But for the most part, I kind of want the gradient to exist. So I'm kind of trying to reinforce that a bit. And yeah, so actually, you know what, let's get that a little bit closer to a match to this and a little bit more solid. Especially just like right around this section here. There we go. Okay. And then once again, that's actually a little bit too much. So we're going to go back to this again. And we're going to kind of scale back the lighter sections a bit. Kind of make like this pattern extend that way as much as we can fuss with it. But there actually looks pretty darn good. Like it kind of looks like this is all one distinct shape, and that's kind of what I was going for, and then these just kind of blend into the shades of the background. I could go back and add a little bit more shading to some of these, add some, you know, brighter spots to make it look like, you know, the rest of the bushes around, and just give it some additional feature that kind of, just pop up like that. And then, yeah, we'll just kind of put that outline there. No, that's not really working. Let's just kind of give it the airbrush and get it back to generally where it was. And yeah, okay, actually, yeah, that turned out pretty good on the other end. It has a little bit more shading to it. So yeah, now from like this angle here, if you didn't know that was there, you might not notice it at all. So yeah, there was one other thing down here. I wanted to get rid of this weird red spot. So I'm just going to take color from around that, spread it around a bit, take that, spread that around a little bit, and yeah, that would be that. Okay, that is a bit of a splotch there, so we're going to grab some of the darker. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. And yeah, that's about the long and short of what I'm capable of fixing on one of these. And yeah, taking another look at this, looks fine, so we're just gonna save that as is, update the picture itself, and then we're gonna drag it onto the card that I designed earlier and finish everything up. So here we are, back in Paint for the final time. Guess we were just in it, but this is a new window because I'm working on something else. But yeah, so we're just going to do the same thing we did with the captain. First, we're going to make the image the appropriate canvas size. Then we're going to pull in the image that we were just working on. Okay, so there that is. Yep, as you can see, all of our changes have been made. So we're just going to size this into the art box here. Boop, boop. Boop. And boop. So there's that. And we'll go fix the width there. Come back here to our preferred flavor text font. Just give her something interesting to say. Yep, take a last look here before I go back to put it in Tabletop Simulator. Yeah, all looks good. So let's go do that. We'll finish things off. Okay, so here we are back in Tabletop Simulator. It's just how we left it. Still got the Paladin Captain sitting there, and that's fine. We'll just leave him there. We're going to do pretty much the same thing. We're going to drag over a custom card, go to a full rectangle, and then we're going to load up the image front and back. Okay, there we go. Go ahead and just import. Boop. And there we have it. We've got an elf duelist. Yeah, I'll just kind of angle it up there, get a good look at it. And I do like to typically have new cards next to existing cards for comparison. Usually I'll try and drag stuff out of the same set. So like since I've got the elves here, I'll pull over like an assassin and the archer, maybe the mage, and just kind of look at them all together. And it's like, yeah, that generally fits. This one's a little bit more stylized than the others, potentially. But, still has the same general vibe. And, yep. So that's, that's a process. That was how I've been updating cards. That's how I make new cards. So that's just about everything I wanted to cover in this video. Yeah, like I said at the start, this is all part of a larger project to update the entire game to this new version, this new art style. So if we just kind of go over here into all of my cards, you can see, I've been making some pretty good progress. I've got all the beast folk, all the dwarves, all these elves, got all these goblins, and we're down to the paladins. As you can see, that's why I was just working on him. I'll have to update this with the new model here in a second, but that's not something I need to do on screen. I can get that on my own time. But yeah, so I just need to finish off the paladins, a few random cards here. I do have this new set there that I've already implemented. So yeah, there's just like a handful more cards, maybe 20 or so, roughly, maybe a few more. And then there's a handful of additional new cards that I'm probably going to design and put in. So, yeah, I'm pretty well on my way. I'd say I'm about 75% done, at least at this point. So with that, I will go ahead and sign off here. This update should be ready in probably a few days or so, if I had to estimate, assuming nothing terrible happens. So, yeah, I'll just go ahead and say I will see you guys next time. Later.